Beautiful. All right. Well, I believe we are live. Hopefully, if everything's gone according to plan here, I am going to take 2 seconds and turn on my lights to make sure that I'm lit a little bit better. There we go. Now I'm feeling lively. Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. Welcome to Web Wednesday, which is the show where we bring on very smart people and talk to them about something that is web dev related. Because, of course, trying to navigate this space where we've got 101 100,001 different frameworks can be a little bit complex. So let's bring on people and let's talk to them. And so today I'm super excited to be joined by Jen Looper. So Jen Looper works over on a sibling team to mine and has a long and storied background in doing web development. That she's actually founded Vue Vixens, which became Front End Foxes, which is this fantastic community site for teaching girls how to program web dev, and just a whole bunch of other just great resources that are there. She has a background in medieval French literature, if I remember my time period correct. So definitely an interesting background there. So super excited to bring her on and to chat about web dev and her background and get into it. So yeah. So Jen, thanks for joining today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. It's been a while since I've been on Channel 9, so.
Well, we need to fix it. We need to bring you on more often. So yeah. So one of the things that I always love to do to start my broadcast for Web Wednesday is to start with the question of how you got into tech. Like, how did you become Jen Looper? Which gets a little bit weird when I ask to people who aren't Jen Looper how you became Jen Looper. But anyway, so like always start with that question, because we all have our different backgrounds, we all have our different paths here, and I always love to kind of share that. So how did you become Jen Looper? How did you get to where you are today?
It's been a long haul. Whenever I get this question, I think of the lady on the Titanic. It's like, it's been 83 years. But when I was 16, around that age, I was absolutely 100% sure that I was going to be a French teacher. Hello. Because I'd been to France, I had a host family. I'm still in touch with that host family, actually. They're really good friends. And I was absolutely sure I wanted to, major in French and become a French teacher and go to Paris as often as possible and all that good stuff. Well, I went all the way through college. I started at Wellesley College, and then I went to Cal Berkeley. And I had decided by that time I wanted to focus on the Middle Ages, medieval French literature, which is really an interesting period. It's kind of a long period, so my specific specialty within that is 13th century prose romance. In France, the 13th century was kind of a golden age, 12th and 13th century. And there's a lot of really amazing literature that came out of that era. Unfortunately, I got my PhD in, oops.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, in 97. So 96 and 97, everything was crashing and burning. It was a big mess. It was very hard to get jobs, and the academic job market sort of started bottoming out. And people started not hiring for tenure track, but actually hiring for just adjuncts. I did that for a little while, and I couldn't pay my childcare. It was that, you're getting about $1,500 a semester teaching every day and teaching French language. And I didn't want to do any of that, and I wanted to actually get paid. So I got lucky, and I just decided I was going to retrain. And my husband helped me make that decision. He's an MIT professor, so he was able to help me with what was getting into macromedia university.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, learning the Adobe stack. So I came up in the Adobe stack and through Cold Fusion. So that really kind of ages me a lot. But Cold Fusion paid the bills for a long time, just making websites.
Speaking of things that are 84 years old.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if I could even write it now. I think it's still around, but it did what it was supposed to do,
Yeah.
And then, so then just kind of worked my way from small companies, startups, through the dot-com bust, and then I went to a nonprofit for a little while, went to Jewish Family and Life, which was a really cool startup. We took care of the teenagers in that demographic. We had a website called Balaga News. It was all about, news for the Jewish teenagers, super fun. And worked in insurance, I worked at Sun Life for a little while, and then I got amazingly lucky and got a job at Telerik. And Telerik is a fantastic company founded in Bulgaria. And I managed to become a developer advocate in that company after having been a developer for about almost 20 years. So became a developer advocate because I wanted to pivot a little bit and take more care of the community. So at Telerik, I was given the tools to do that, and I'm eternally grateful to that company. They really helped me find a terrific path. And I was able to advocate for NativeScript, which is a cool way to build mobile apps. You can actually use Tailwind in NativeScript, FYI. So that's fun to know. And then I was really, really lucky and found my way to Microsoft. And that's been, it's kind of like when it all kind of comes together. And I'm really, really grateful to be here as a developer advocate in cloud advocacy. So that's me.
I love that. That is such a fantastic story. I love how you sort of just like bounced your way around and then found yourself here. That's fantastic.
It's like the slow route. There's fast routes and slow routes. I think I took the slow route.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's cool. So let me start with this question, which is what is Tailwind CSS?
Yeah, Tailwind CSS is becoming very popular with folks who are looking to build a website relatively quickly without writing too much CSS. So I'm actually not that great at writing CSS from scratch. I'm not that great at Sass. If you've tried Sass, I'm not confident enough with my CSS skills to make sure that all the breakpoints are proper, to make sure that everything's properly installed and properly scoped. And
I don't think anybody is. I don't think anybody's strong enough in their CSS skills.
There are three people. Sarah Sweden. But it ain't me. So
no, me neither.
Yeah, so I need some tools to help me feel a little bit more confident in styling things. And I'm also the kind of developer who I'm not great at design, but I know what I like and I know what looks nice. So I'm happy when that sort of comes to fruition under my fingers. And with Tailwind, you can actually make it happen. Yes, Flexbox represent for sure. But yes, so Tailwind, if I can share my screen, if you look at their terrific website, let's see, share screen, tabs, let me go to Tailwind CSS. So on their website, they talk about how you can build modern websites without ever leaving your HTML. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be writing in your divs and your elements here, like a block quote. You can add classes that will tell Tailwind what's supposed to be happening. So if you look at this figure, you see at a medium breakpoint, which is actually the screen we're looking at now, you're going to have a flex layout. You're going to give it a background of gray, which is kind of light. So it's 100. There's gray 100 through I think 900. This is the lightest gray, and you can see. This is building this card right here with Sarah.
Okay.
It's rounded XL, and then there's padding of 8, and at the medium breakpoint, there's padding of 0. So there's some stuff going on here that's kind of interesting. And you can drill down and you can read, and this is what Tailwind looks like. You start seeing a bazillion classes, that's Tailwind, you know for sure.
But it looks like each one of those classes is doing something like very specific. Like this one is just responsible for setting the color and like not doing anything else. And this one is responsible for just rounding the corner and not doing anything else.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why there's so many of them. So they're quite specific. And I wonder, I'm going to try to resize, oops. I'm just going to try to resize my screen. If I can get a hold of my cursor and see if we can see the breakpoints happening. Let's see, so that push down. I want to see if right there. Okay, so you can see how we just lost our rounded corners. Because this image, I think, so in the medium, there's rounded none, but normally it's rounded full. So Tailwind is mobile first framework. So you're going to add a class that will say, normally we're going to have rounded full, and then it's going to degrade. So at medium, you're going to go rounded none, but everything else is going to be rounded full. So it's a little confusing because you would think you would want to write your CSS classes starting with small and going up to large. Don't do that. It's not going to work. So you can't say SM colon rounded none, MD colon rounded none. You're going to start with just rounded full, and then you're going to degrade from large to medium to small. So that's a little bit of a trick with Tailwind that might trip you up.
Okay, that's a little bit different because I know if I'm remembering right with like Bootstrap, you typically start with the small and then build up from there.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So the other thing about Tailwind, if I switch the tab, can you see this tab? No, I probably have to reshare the screen.
Yeah, you'll have to reshare it. Yeah.
So the other thing about Tailwind is that they do not offer pre-built components. So they offer instead the free framework of Tailwind, and you do with it what you will. But they also have this thing called Tailwind Ui, and this is a paid. It's in preview right now, but this is their way of monetizing Tailwind, which in my opinion is totally cool.
Sure.
But some people give them a little bit of flack for this, although I feel like you need to be able to feed the family with all this work. Adam, if you're listening, bravo with this, because I used to work at Telarc and we had Kendo from components, and we're, somebody's got to pay the bills. So that's really cool. I must say that if I need really complicated components, I'm going to go to Bulma, and I'm going to go to Vueify, which is the Bulma component library written and very nicely implemented with Vue, because I'm a Vue developer, Vue.js developer. Bulma and Vueify, B-U-E-F-Y, has terrific components, like a really nice table that you can tab and sort and do all kinds of cool things with. So that's just my recommendation if you are cheap like me. Otherwise, use the go with Tailwind all the way and use those components.
Absolutely. And and just as a real quick aside here, and I don't want to get too far into it, but if somebody wants to say, hey, I'm going to make something and I'm going to charge for it, or if I'm going to make something and I'm going to make it for free, like that's their decision. Like, they're the content creator. It's something that they put out there. They should be able to decide.
Yeah, for sure. So that is one of the things that people like to discuss. But yeah, Tailwind is this nice library, and you can install it in your applications, in your React, Vue, VuePress, all of your JavaScript applications, and just start adding loads of classes. The installation itself can be, I found it to be sometimes a little challenging, especially as I'm doing a lot of sites in VuePress. So VuePress does not do very well with post CSS 7, which is required for the new Tailwind. So I have to use a compatibility build in VuePress. This is one of those moments where you're just like, why?
Yeah.
But I got it working. I'll show you the code. But what I thought I would do in this, before showing you any code, is to just walk you through what you can do with Tailwind, to show you some sites that I've built with Tailwind. Okay.
Absolutely.
So in this case, I'm going to share my screen, but I'm just going to share, I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm going to share my entire screen so that I can just walk through tabs.
Little dance while we wait. There we go. Okay.
So here, this is the Azure Maya mystery, and it is done in VuePress, but it is styled with Tailwind. So it has this nice responsive nature, so it's going to just degrade down, and it has, this is the camera roll on the left, degrades down to a camera roll like this. So some nice responsive elements. This has gone through Microsoft's accessibility review, which is very severe and very detailed. And Tailwind did pretty well with the accessibility, which is kind of interesting and good to know. For like these drop downs, you need to be able to tab. So when you're tabbing in an accessible website, you need to have a logical keystrokes so that you can get through your website without having to use a mouse to click. So there's lots of things that you can do to make your Tailwind website accessible just out of the box. And that's kind of very helpful, I thought. Another VuePress site is my blog, which is not loud at all. I don't know. I just redesign this thing once in a while just for practice. But I kind of like this kind of 80s style because that was where I came up in the world. But yeah, and this has a couple different layouts. So the article layout is like this. It has a contact form with the elements styled up in Tailwind. And I think there's some videos here, but that's kind of a basic Tailwind ViewPress site. Frontend Foxes was redesigned recently. We had a bunch of contributors help us at Hacktoberfest to design this website. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. And it's all Tailwind, but done with Vue.js, which is a little bit more straightforward, but see, it's nice degrading. And you can see how the cards all march down the screen nicely. So I'm quite happy with that.
I love it.
Yeah, and then I started launching a couple of extra sites. So I just launched a line of zines. So if anybody wants to go to my site, I'll put a link, I'll put some links in the chat maybe. But if you're interested in machine learning, this is a Tailwind ViewPress site that has some zines that you can grab. So one is Introduction to Machine Learning, another is Supervised Learning. You can just download this for free and fold up a zine. It's really fun. And to give you an idea of how much I have to style, this is a basic ViewPress site without any kind of, or very minimal CSS, just some fonts added in and some colors. So to get a ViewPress site to look not like a ViewPress site, you need to get pretty severe with it with the Tailwind. So those are some of the sites I wanted to show you. So basic ViewPress and then Vue.js site, standard material. And then I can show you some code.
Actually, before you get into that, I want to ask a real quick question, just because you like sort of triggered it, and then somebody else had asked it as well over in the chat, which is, you had mentioned about like trying to kind of fight a little bit with a ViewPress site to not get it to look like a ViewPress site. And this was something that sort of triggered my head, because this is one of the biggest things that people will complain about when it comes to Bootstrap, is that they want Bootstrap, but they don't want it to look like a Bootstrap site. And I sort of get that criticism, but at the same time, I really do like having that general layout. And anybody who knows me and has seen me present knows I love Bootstrap. So in no way, shape, or form am I knocking Bootstrap. But I think that this is a very natural question. And Sameh Mohammed had asked this question: is Bootstrap. So how does Tailwind compare to Bootstrap? Why might I choose Tailwind over Bootstrap? I asked you like 4 questions there. Find one that you like and go ahead and answer it.
Sure. So Tailwind versus Bootstrap. So I haven't used Bootstrap for a while. So what I'm saying may be out of date, but when I did use it, I remember having to override a lot of the styles to get the pixel perfection that was required at the shop I was working with. And I remember that caused some overhead, and I had to write CSS to kind of override these styles. Now I'm wondering if the more recent Bootstraps have stopped obliging people to do that. So I'm not sure. That's more of a question for people that have used it more recently, but that was my experience several years ago trying Bootstrap. But I have to say, Bootstrap paved the way for all of this, right? And Sass and all of these cool frameworks to just sort of get your CSS into some kind of framework so that we can do something with it. But Tailwind is very unopinionated, and you can override the heck out of it. So that's kind of quite helpful. As you saw, I mean, you can really you can actually configure it to change the breakpoints. So you can really, get that pixel perfection that is required by your shop. And I think that's kind of one of the major things that Tailwind brings to the table. Now, I don't know if you can have these overrides now with Bootstrap, and maybe you can.
And so that pixel perfection, just to define the term, you're talking about like as I go from one size to the other to the other, that because Bootstrap, and I think that this is still the case, is that they still have the 4 or 5 specific screen sizes, that I don't think that they give you the ability to change that. It might be something in 5, but if I remember right, with 4, you're still stuck with the 4 or 5 screen sizes. But that's what you're talking about with pixel perfection, is I'm resizing my browser, and on, let's say on a Pixel 5, I want it to look like this, but if somebody's using a Galaxy Note, which is going to be, a bigger phone, that it's going to look something slightly different.
I think so, yeah. So I think that that Tailwind does give you quite a lot of granularity.
Okay.
With that. And the other thing that Tailwind does is allows you in a production build to strip out all of the CSS that you're not using, so you can get quite a small bundle size. Now, admittedly, I'm bad about this. I need to get better about this. And but it is something that is definitely recommended by the folks at Tailwind. Let's strip that down and it'll get really a lot smaller.
Yeah. So let me go grab this real quick. So, yeah. So Panda Watch, that's a great name. Points out that Tailwind is good at being quick and specific. Bootstrap is quick with more overview rather than specific. And I think that sums up what you said pretty well there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. That's a great way to put it. And not knocking any of these frameworks. The last thing we want to do is cause framework wars, but use what works for you. And if you love Sass or writing everything by hand, God bless.
You set up the next question perfectly. Then from Ancient Coder, another fantastic name, which is
I know these people.
I feel like this could be either of us. Would using CSS without any framework be better at times? Specifically, if you have to do a lot of customization?
I'm thinking of a basic ViewPress site. You have that ViewPressy look, and there's just a little bit of CSS in there. And I think if you don't really want to have a very, very fancy or very customized site, then maybe avoiding a framework might be better for you. You can get away, especially in a Vue app, because you can scope your styles, you can scope your CSS into your components, and really, isolate some of your styles that way. So, of course, you can also lose your styles that way, but that's a different issue. But yeah, if you don't want anything too fancy, and if you just want to ship the site, you could go with a framework that's nice and has the very, very basic and light touch to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And just because somebody did call out, I'm going to guess that bald bearded builder here.
That's Michael.
Fantastic. I love it. Yeah. So and going back real quick to about the different frameworks, that I'm a huge believer in this concept that if the only tool that you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. Like, React is good for doing one thing, Vue is good for doing something else. And I feel that same way then is true about Bootstrap and Tailwind, is that they serve different purposes. And if you're going, this is it, and everybody must be using this, you very well might wind up using the wrong tool for the job.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciated about Tailwind when I was getting used to it is that I was able to use it in a mobile app. With native scripts. So the guy who developed NativeScript Vue, which is the Vue port for NativeScript, managed to get Tailwind to pretty quickly to make a plugin. And then you can start using these styles and classes with some small changes in your NativeScript and your mobile apps. And that was really, really great, because that's one fewer things to mess with and to learn. That's awesome. I loved it.
I love that.
Do you want to take a look at this article, Why Tailwind Is Bad?
That's sort of like a perfect segue then. Yeah, since we're talking a little bit about about frameworks and why this might not always be the right tool for the job. Yeah, why might Tailwind not be a good fit for people? I think it's definitely it's worthwhile to highlight both sides here.
Yeah, so Jared White wrote a very interesting article a couple days ago, Why Tailwind Isn't For Me. And it kind of went around, because I really like the way he puts, problem I keep running into, however, is this increasing popular sentiment, Tailwind is the future, man. It's the way things should be done. And it inspires a cadre of evangelists. I mean, that's just the whole concept of frameworks that kind of promotes this clubby, clicky atmosphere. Like this happens with every framework. And that's just kind of the nature of the tribal way, or the way we think sometimes. But going beyond that, I think there's some interesting things here. It promotes ugly HTML. And there's some truth to that, as you saw.
Well, talk about that for a second. Like, why do you say that promotes ugly HTML?
Yeah, so if you can take a look at this little P tag here. So we have a text line 600 dark, text line 400, text small, and it's like too long for me to even scroll past. It's really.
So this is it's sort of like the opposite then, because one of the criticisms about Bootstrap is that you wind up with just nested div tag, or if you're like using HTML5, then maybe nested article tags or nested section tags, and so you've just got all of those nested tag after tag after tag. But here it looks like instead you just have here's my huge list of classes and listing it all that way. Okay.
Now you can avoid this repetition by using apply. And I can show you an example of how I use it in one of my sites. But so you have this apply keyword, and it allows you to say, for example, I have every single A tag in my website. I'm applying the class underline because I want every single A to be underlined. And then you just have that one line in your little stylus file. I'm going to show you an example. However, this guy says that this is lousy because when you need to switch from Tailwind to something else, like Bootstrap or something else, then you're going to have to rip all that out and rewrite it, because apply is very Tailwind. It's a very Tailwind pattern. So that kind of is unfortunate.
And as a real quick aside, just because you mentioned, like anchor and underline, having underlines on anchors is a good thing for accessibility, because then it makes it very clear as to where the links are.
Yes, very important. And it's nice to just write that once instead of 3,000 times.
Yes.
So, and then reason 3, Tailwind's focus on design systems and tokens can easily be replaced by CSS custom properties, aka variables, which is a standard. Now, that comes back to me not being comfortable with modern CSS, because when I see syntax like this, root, spacing 8 to rem, I don't know. Yeah, so this is laziness on my part. So Tailwind does promote laziness, perhaps, but
yeah, and I can see that, and there's certainly because I remember, and you obviously, I'm going to assume you've experienced jQuery. I remember this with jQuery, where some people were complaining because it then allowed developers not to have to learn JavaScript because they were just doing jQuery, and but at the same time, you still need to grok, you still need to understand some of the core basics. So I don't know.
Yeah, you got to know when to sprinkle in that little magic pixie dust, and when to just run like the wind.
Yeah.
Then there's this reason for which I'm not into web components. I don't use them, probably because I'm coming from a mobile, more native background recently. And I think that Adam Wathan pushed back on this one, so I'm going to skip reason 4. And then just encouraging the div span tag soup. This, I think, is a bit of an issue, because they have markup like this. And if you take a look at the homepage of Tailwind CSS, there's a quote on here, and I will switch screens if I can manage to do it. Go back to Tailwind CSS's homepage. There's an interesting quote here at the where was it? Yes, best practices don't actually work. And this is from Adam, who wrote Tailwind CSS. I've written a few thousand words on why traditional semantic class names are the reason CSS is hard to maintain. The truth is, you're never going to believe me until you actually try it. If you can suppress the urge to retch long enough to give it a chance, I really think you'll wonder how you ever worked with CSS any other way. I love his style, but semantic tags are more than, as we know, just having to do with CSS. This is about accessibility as well. So when I went through the review at Microsoft of the Maya mystery, I had to make sure that I had roles added onto all of my banners, because I wasn't able to use semantic elements, partially also because I was also using ViewPress, which is kind of perverting it from its original purpose anyway. But I think we don't want to dub too much on semantic tags.
Yeah. So semantic tags, semantic classes is, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but that's basically where and I'm going to use a Bootstrap example here, where I could say, hey, I want this to be a like a modal dialog box, and so I can do that by just saying class equals modal, and then poof, now it gets everything that goes along with being a modal. And so now if I wanted to go in and change just like one thing about it, that can sometimes be a little bit tricky. Is that basically semantic, or am I completely wrong here?
Yeah, I'm also thinking along the lines of the actual tags that are semantic HTML, like when you have a banner tag, and that kind of stuff. So because that's so important for accessibility reviews. You need your screen page to understand what this is, a banner, and this is, that, the other thing. This is a button, not a div that's styled like a button, that kind of stuff. So you gotta watch it with that stuff, I think, and not go overboard.
Okay, so I was completely wrong.
No worries.
Yeah. So
and the standards folks get a little bit scared when they see someone saying that standards don't matter. So best practices don't work. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. And Panda does bring up, I think, a fantastic point, when it comes to like using any framework or anything like that, to each their own, as long as you get what's going on underneath. And I think that there's definitely a lot of truth there, that if you're going to use any framework, you need to have some understanding about what it is that's going on underneath, because, and you mentioned that you'd experienced this a bit with Tailwind still, is you do still sometimes need to write a bit of CSS. So you still need to have some level of CSS experience.
Yeah. And I can maybe share my screen one more time and show you
100%.
what I'm working in the wild here.
Yeah, you can share your screen as many times as you want. Yeah.
Just to make sure I'm showing the right thing.
No, you're driving the show here.
Okay, so I'm building a new site. It looks a little bit like my blog because I tend to use this grid a lot. But so I, a while ago, worked with my daughter who did some of the illustrations, and my dad who wrote the content. My dad is really great with personal finance. And he decided that we should write a book for kids on personal finance. And I published all of this as ebooks for mobile, so they're like downloadables within the app stores. And I am really tired of having free content and paying $100 every year for Apple to allow me to publish there. So I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just going to publish on the web. So I'm taking all of my snappy books and putting them on the web. So what do? I go to ViewPress because this is a lot of writing, and I'm creating these ebooks, and I'm using my Tailwind implementation within ViewPress. So I thought what I'd show you is like how this is going to all kind of work together. So this is Snappy and the Nuts. This is the first book in the series so far, and each one has a little ladybug that gives you some call outs. But it's pretty basic, and it just talks about how Snappy has to find a way to store his nuts for the winter. And he talks to his Auntie Pip, and he goes to the Owl's Forest Bank. Mr. Fox tries to get him to take his nuts into his bank, but he's a total crook, so we're not going to do that. But so I haven't got some of the illustrations back in here. But anyway, he makes the deposit, and then his nuts are safe. And the Deer brothers will not trample them into the ground because that's terrible. So that is the story of Snappy. And it all looks like this in Tailwind and ViewPress. So whenever I'm showing code, I always like to start with package JSON because this is the heart and soul of what's going on in your site.
Yep. So
here my dependencies are this dicey compatibility build because Tailwind went up to version 2, and they're expecting post CSS 7 to be available for your site. ViewPress hasn't gotten there yet. ViewPress 2 is coming along soon, so if anybody's watching. Yeah. But anyway, so that's what you have to do for a current ViewPress site. You have your Tailwind config file, which is auto-generated, and it kind of copies some of these classes in here. And you can, this is where you put your customizations and where you can set some of your breakpoints, change, like if you don't want gray 100 to be like this, then you would set it to a different color.
Oh, okay. And if you scroll back up real quick, because I just noticed then the screens, that's now all of your different breakpoints. So now I can very clearly define, this is where my small is, this is where my medium is, this is where my large is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you can even extend to like more breakpoints. I'm not 100% sure, but you can definitely configure the heck out of this. And the other thing is there's quite a nice VS Code extension that allows you to build with Tailwind, so that when I'm writing, like if I wanted to change this from BG gray 100, I could say BG blue 300, and it would show me that color right there. So it's giving me some nice IntelliSense here. So I don't want
I
that.
love that. And if you go back to that config file again, I'm sorry, I'm now just like in love
Are you excited?
with that config file
Oh,
because because this is like one of the biggest challenges with Bootstrap and for anybody who's watching, please forgive me. I have a Bootstrap background, so this is just how I'm coming at this. But like with Bootstrap, if I want to go in and I want to change like the default colors and things like that, it's now up to me to write CSS and to start overriding then all of the classes, that I don't have a nice, neat little config file where I can just go in and say, hey, I now want all of my success buttons to be blue or to do things like that. I need to, write CSS. So I love the fact that there's that config file there. So like right here, you had me at hello, like right here, I'm already sold on Tailwind.
So I accept unmarked 50s. Just kidding. So this is your config file is all part of your installation, and the installation instructions, actually the docs are very, very good. So if you go for installation, install Tailwind, you can have all these different instructions, but the post CSS plugin or via NPM, there's different instructions here. But I think what you do is once you install Tailwind, then you do like an init, and then that builds this file for you, if I'm right. Yes, npx. Oh yeah, this is how I did this. So npx Tailwind CSS init, and that builds your config file out like that.
And for anybody who's not familiar, npx, because I wasn't familiar because it's still relatively new, it effectively gives you the ability to run an npm package without having to install said npm package. So it's great for utilities.
Yeah. So then you can point in your config file, is that right? Yeah, so you have your post CSS plugins detailed in your config file, but you are pointing your main element here towards your config file. So that's the first point of entry for this ViewPress site. So that's something interesting to know as well.
Okay.
And then you start the final installation pieces that you need to add these elements, your base, your components, and your utilities into your a new stylus file. Now, it's funny that we're here with stylus, but it's an index.styl file. And that's just the stack that we're using. But you can see I have a little bit of a mishmash here of some overrides. I'll bet you I could get rid of this one. This one could probably change to an apply. But the reason I have some of this is because this is a ViewPress site and I need to give a background to the body tag. But in ViewPress, I cannot directly put a class on the body tag because it's built up. You don't have
okay.
So there's just some weird stuff with ViewPress.
Oh, okay. So this would be with ViewPress, and for anybody who's not familiar, ViewPress is basically like a blogging type of tool, static web app generation tool that's built around Vue. So it sounds like with ViewPress then that it wants to take control over a fair bit, and this is giving you the ability to go, no, actually, I really want it to do this way. Okay, all right.
Yeah. And then here's one of those applies. So that's what I was mentioning. So I have all of my H1s looking like this, and maybe I don't want to do this, maybe I want to make it more specific for breakpoints. Maybe it doesn't need to be text 3XL on my iPhone, so we can kind of tweak that. That will change the size.
Yeah, real quick on that. So font bold, that's pretty intuitive. That's obviously going to make my font bold. That I could figure out on my own. So the text like 3XL, that would be like if I was going to do this with raw CSS, that would effectively be like going in and setting the font size or setting the EM in that. I'm assuming, yes.
Yes. So that's your typography. If I could find it in the docs, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. Yeah, that's the size, and you can be also very specific with your weights if you want to be more specific. But
okay,
yeah, and then it tells you what is, because this is a very nice IntelliSense plugin.
Ah, there you go. Oh wow, yeah, look at that. That's fantastic.
Sweet, right?
Yeah. And then what's the MV5 going to be doing?
Margin bottom.
Oh, okay.
Is at the 5, so it's not 5 pixels. It's a series from 1 to 6, I think, something like that. So that's another thing to get used to, is like these are not necessarily pixels or EMs.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm okay with using that because like I don't want to have to constantly be thinking about size. I just want to make my decisions and then just be able to use that. There is a real quick question. What VS Code extension are you using that shows the git commit date on the line that you're currently on?
VS Code extension? Good question.
Is that just built into VS Code now? I can't
Tailwind IntelliSense.
Okay.
This guy.
Okay.
Is that what you were asking? Sorry.
You know, what's funny is when I threw it up, I thought that was the question, but it's about the git commit dates, and I think that's built in now with VS Code.
Yeah.
Because I remember that Visual Studio had that, and I want to say that it's now inside of VS Code, but I'd have to double check.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And then, so with ViewPress, you need to use some layouts because you're putting a theme on top of your ViewPress site so that you can get away from that ViewPressy look. And we have a lot of stuff going on here. So this is that grid that's on the homepage. And you have all these bazillions of classes at this point. So it's a very Tailwindy kind of action going on here.
And just as a real quick, so anybody who's not familiar with a view file, that's effectively, I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble for saying this. It's effectively the JSX for Vue, for anybody who's familiar with JSX, that it gives you the ability to create a component, put in all of your HTML and your code and everything else. It's just now in a special view file.
This is just a template for me. So you usually have your template style and script blocks, but you don't have to bother with the style because it's all covered by Tailwind's classes. Right. So that's one thing you didn't have to write, so that's cool. But yeah, and you can use JSX actually in Vue if you like. I've never actually tried, but you can.
I remember because I had John Papa on, who of course knows everything that there is to know about Vue, and I had asked him, you know, if he wanted to chat about JSX with Vue, and basically he was like, "I know that it's possible. That's about it."
Yes.
Yeah. And I know about like this much about JSX.
Yeah. So that is my snappy site as it's kind of working through itself, and but yeah, you can really do a lot with this library. The documentation is very good. I appreciate that, and it really kind of helps you figure out all the little things. One little magic piece I found, which really helped me with a site I'm working on, to center an image within a div. How exciting. It's just m-auto, margin is auto. I was like, it's so easy. So you're not fighting that battle anymore.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. I love it. If somebody did want to, you know, start getting into doing Tailwind, like what would you recommend for somebody to get started into Tailwind? And let's say that it's somebody that's relatively new, so maybe they just have some CSS experience, so they don't have like a Bootstrap background, so this is their first CSS framework. How would you suggest getting started in it?
I think I would go to Tailwind CSS, and on the installation page, I'm just going to dig. There is find the menu. There are a couple scaffolded frameworks that you can use. I'm pretty sure there's a Nuxt site. There's not a ViewPress site because they're not quite ready, to be perfectly honest. But let me see. Go to installation, integration guides. Let me just go to this. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. So
I like the song that leads into that.
Okay, here we go. Yes. So what I would do is go to this docs installation page and just grab one of these frameworks. I'm hearing great things about Next.js. If you're interested in working with React. For a server, it's a server render. It's like Nuxt. Nuxt and Next are sisters and brothers. Or you could just do create React app. That would be cool. If you want to use Vue 3, they've got the scaffold right here, so you can just go ahead and walk through this. And I think all you have to do is, follow these instructions and then do an npx tailwind css, and it'll get you moving.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. At some point, like the couple of things that I need to eventually get somebody on to talk about, because I keep hearing so much about it, is like Next and Next. I keep hearing so much about it, and why can I not think of the name of it? It starts with the letter D. I want to say Denali, but I know that that's not right. It's the quote unquote like new version of Node. It's not really like a new version.
Oh,
of Node.
Dino.
There you go. Yeah.
It's spelled sideways. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So I really need to get somebody on to chat about that, because I know that one of the big things that Dino does is it will run TypeScript, which is something that is very much near and dear to my heart. So
you use TypeScript in Vue, of course, but yeah.
Yep.
Mark in the chat, Mark CRV, I totally misunderstood your question and went to a different place. But yeah, GitLens, everyone is raving about GitLens.
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. And the little asterisks there are there because our Twitch is configured such that if anybody puts in a URL, it will just automatically star it out. So that's yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why the stars are there. It always looks a little bit funny when somebody will put in like a chat question, and they'll have pasted in a URL, and then it's just the stars afterwards. It always looks a little bit funny there. So yeah, cool. And definitely if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and ask. So cool. So then with Tailwind, the other big question that I have, because of course this is, while we're, talking about one of the things that people don't necessarily like about Bootstrap, and again, let's be clear, we're not in any way, shape, or form bashing frameworks. I love Bootstrap, and I also know with Bootstrap 5 that this is eventually going to go away. But Bootstrap does take a jQuery dependency. So does Tailwind have a jQuery dependency? And then B is, how heavy is the JavaScript dependency, if any, that Tailwind is going to wind up taking?
That is a great question. I don't have numbers for you.
Okay.
But I do have...
It's exactly 7,846 bytes.
There's probably numbers on here. Yeah, so using with preprocessors, and this is the one, optimizing for production. Here are some numbers.
There we go.
So let's see. Uncompressed.
Okay.
3,739 KBs. Minified, 3,000. Tips a little bit off.
Okay.
Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to use purge right there. When building for production, you should always use Tailwind's purge option to reshake your unused styles and optimize your final build styles. And that will, it's very hard to end up with more than 10 KB of compressed CSS. I have not figured out how to do this properly yet. Probably because I have not had time to really dive into this page right here. And I definitely will be doing that.
That's awesome, though. I love the fact that it gives you that option, like it's just as part of your build, to say, hey, go ahead and get rid of everything, because that's certainly, like, when you're talking about any framework, there definitely is that 80-20 rule of you're 80% of the time you're only using 20% of the features. It'd be really nice to get rid of everything else, and just from a high level, just like web dev standpoint, if I can, pull up my soapbox for 30 seconds here, like one of the things that we always need to remember, and it's something we so frequently forget as web developers, is that not everybody is on broadband. That you have people that are using mobile, and like even in here in the US, there's still a sizable percentage of the country that either does not have access to broadband or doesn't have cheap access to broadband. And so they're either relying on a slower connection or they're relying on their phone, where chances are then they're paying for data. So we always need to keep that in mind, that those bytes, those KBs do eventually add up, and forcing that upon our users is not a good thing. So Yeah.
Definitely. So you want to just feed this purge array actually, this path to whatever files you want to feed through this mangle. And I tried this and it chewed my CSS to pieces. So I was like,
Oh, no.
But I'm going to try again and try to do it properly.
Cool. I dig it. I dig it. All right. And yeah, the last question is from Samay Mohammed, which is how to be like you. So how to be like Jen Looper.
Like me? You sure you want to be like me? I'll bet you are. I'll bet you're a developer, maybe a parent. I have 2 kids. One's in college, one's going to graduate in a couple months. And it's just like, just to enjoy your craft and enjoy your work and not get obsessed over the changing nature of this, but to embrace it, right? Because especially on the front end, which is where we are perhaps, or where I am anyway, you can't fall in love, you can't get married to a framework, because tomorrow you're going to get a divorce, and that's, in this context, it's okay. Just enjoy the ride, man. We only live once.
I love that. That's such a great message, and it's such an important one because, like, in the time that we've been talking, there's probably 5 more JavaScript frameworks that
right?
have been launched. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I love that of like, don't get married to one. Like, keep looking around, keep playing with different things. I definitely love that. I definitely love that.
It's a great time to be a developer. Honestly, there's so much we can do, and once you feel like you're comfortable with something, try to teach it to someone else and help lift them up. So that's a really cool thing. And also, there's no better way to really learn something than to explain it to somebody else. So.
I think that's a perfect message to close on. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic advice. Cool. So yeah. So where can people find you?
Yep. So find me on Twitter at Jen Looper, and I'm on my website. You saw it in the 1980s, like wild stuff going on. JenLooper.com, and you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on, talking about Tailwind. This was great. You've definitely inspired me to get in and start looking. So I'm super excited. So thank you.
Sure. Enjoy. Have fun.
Yeah, thank you. And for everybody that's viewing, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this as much as Jen and I enjoyed. We're here every week on Wednesdays to chat about all sorts of different web dev things. And then on Thursday mornings, I also do a Code and Coffee. You can find me on Twitter at Geek Trainer. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, everyone. Take care. Stay warm.